right. Welcome to Front Porch Radio, everyone. I'm Julie Wilder. And today we're going to talk trash with my guest, Charlie Pioli, who knows what really happens to the stuff we throw away. In quotation marks, everyone, because for years he's been knee deep in it. Charlie started his career in solid waste and recycling consulting, where he saw firsthand just how much our country wastes every single day. Instead of just shaking his head like any other maybe person could have done, he grabbed a pitchfork, loaded up his Camry, and started O-Town Compost, giving Central Florida a better way to deal with food scraps and turn waste into something that nourishes the earth. Since 2020, O-Town Compost has kept an impressive 10 million pounds out of food waste, of food waste out of the local landfills, and they're now bringing composting into, they've been doing it for a couple of years, 21 Orange County public schools, with dreams of growing that number district-wide. And today we're going to talk about what really happens inside of a landfill, why composting doesn't have to stink, and how one man's trash really can become another's treasure. So let's dig in, do you love my puns, to another conversation for the common good on Front Porch Radio. Welcome, Charlie. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. That was a great intro. Loved it.
Thank you so much. It's fun. Yeah, the puns almost write themselves, honestly. I'm so excited. We ran into each other at East End Market the other day, and I was like, oh, man, I'm so glad to bump into you because I had reached out, I don't know, maybe like 6 months, 9 months ago when I was making plans. I'm planning on opening another restaurant inside of my bookstore, and I knew that you guys existed, and I was like, let me just call them and see what the service is like as I'm writing out my business plan. And I was so impressed then with what you guys have done. And I didn't even know like hardly anything I've discovered since then, since talking to you. So I'm just so grateful that we ran into each other, and there's a lot going on in the world right now. And sometimes we just need to focus on what's right in front of us and things that we can control. And one of them is our waste stream.
Yeah, we can definitely help your restaurant out when you get going, and it will really, you'll find, reduce the amount of trash that you're throwing away. You won't have to contract the city for as big of a dumpster or as frequent collections. I think there's an economic argument to be made for composting, not just all environmental. If anything, the recent election taught us that, people don't want to hear about the environment. They want to hear about, cost savings and, the other non-environmental benefits on top.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting you say that because when I first opened, I'm for those of you listening, I'm one of the original co-founders of Dandelion Community Cafe, and we were like definitely like this eco-oriented restaurant. And I started my like kind of like my public, push to make things environmental and green, which I still believe full forcefully. But then as I got into the world and I started experiencing it more, I realized there was so much going on with economics and socioeconomic stuff. And I was like, well, how are you going to ask people to do this if they can't even, do the basics over here, right? But what's really cool, and I've always been into composting, we had a worm composting dumpster outside of Dandelion for a while. And let me tell you, that was not the right solution because it was very easily accessible for rodents. And that was a nightmare for us to deal with. And so I was just so glad that I was like, in order for us all to do things environmentally, but also economically, like you're saying, it has to be a whole systems approach. Like me as one restaurateur, I couldn't be shoveling, buckets and buckets of compost. I'm already running a restaurant.
And you could say the same for residents.
Right.
There's a good amount of backyard composters just doing their thing, having no problems. But you want to reach a broader subset of people, you have to have a convenient pickup service where, they containerize their food waste. They can people aren't all vegans and vegetarians, so they're going to want to compost their meat, dairy, bones, fish products, and they don't recommend doing that in your backyard pile. So you need like a commercial viable solution, and that's what we're trying to provide. We're not trying to take anything away from backyard composters. As a matter of fact, I compost in my own backyard. I'm not willing to give up those valuable nutrients to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
what we're talking about is like a whole regenerative system here. And so let's kind of start at the beginning here. You started like O-Town Compost. Like I love it that you're like a pitchfork and a Camry. Like that's just such a like amazing image. And I know you also said that you were an avid dumpster diver.
Mhm.
So what was your origin story with this? Like how were you like, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do? And why is it important?
Yeah, I would say I'm born and raised in Portland, Oregon, where, there's a healthy population of people who love the outdoors. I kind of grew up just loving nature. But, after college, my first job out of college took me down to Orlando, Florida for a job in solid waste and recycling consulting. It was something I was passionate about, but I ended up my job was going to landfills, sorting trash, doing what they call a waste characterization study for local governments and state governments, because our government wants to know what type of material is being trashed, what type of material is being recycled, so that they can use that data and make informed decisions. I was the one sorting, tons of trash. That was literally my job. And I was traveling from California to the Midwest, East Coast, all over the place doing it. So it really exposed me to the type of facilities that our country has and how we manage our waste. Uh, it something, really I kind of got burnt out on the job. I was beginning to not realize I didn't really have a community in Orlando, and I've been living there for 2 years. I love going to Danny Lyons drum circles. Um, but as I was getting burnt out on the job, I got a call from my boss that was like, "Hey, I'm not sure we can make payroll this cycle." And that kind of prompted me to look at starting my own business. And one of the first businesses in my mind that I knew I would at least have fun doing was a community composting business, something I had subscribed for myself when I was a college student. And I, kept on with the company working part time, but at the same time, I got incorporated. I started O-Town Compost, and I was just using my Toyota Camry and fitting as many buckets in there as I can. And that was right at the pandemic started. So thankfully, I had signed on 4 commercial clients, and immediately they went away because no one was going into the office, no food waste was being generated. But, I think a lot of our success I attribute to diversification. And we're not only collecting food waste from the commercial side, but residents as well as doing events. So those sides of the business really grew. And then, yeah, I just kept getting working part-time hours for my old company. We were actually doing this project for Orange County where we were monitoring curbside recycle bins, lifting lids, and looking for contamination. So it was right in line with what I love to do. But yeah, O-Town finally got to the point about a year in where I was just like, I have to quit and focus on this full time.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. That is such an amazing thing. So, I mean, you had me at Portland. I'm like, oh, that explains it all. Okay. And so you had the Chut Spa. I mean, you were there. You were literally rifling through the trash, and you're like, this is an incredible opportunity. And I'm just so curious. So this started, of course, right around the pandemic, and yeah, you lost the commercial clientele, but I bet that maybe I don't know, was that like an opening for the residential side? Because now people are really investing in their homes.
Exactly.
They're like, okay, like I'm gonna be a
Yeah.
homesteader now.
People are cooking more and,
Right.
fermenting more. And ultimately, we saw in that first year, we maybe added 100 new residential clients. And the following years, they continued to grow exponentially. But during all that time, I forgot to mention, but I was introduced to a grocery store that starts with an A and is a German grocery store here. and they're not a client, so I don't want to like put them on blast. But I realized that they didn't have a compacting dumpster. You could just go out back during the nighttime when no one else was around to really catch you rummaging around. And I fed myself for 2 years from their dumpster. About 95% of my diet was coming from all the fruit, veggies. I would even find like dark chocolate, occasional bottles of wine, but and then the staples like rice and pasta. It was incredible how much, perfectly good edible food gets thrown away because they're throwing away like a package of oranges, maybe a dozen pack of oranges, one of them goes bad, the whole dozen goes in the trash. So
Right.
I was just like, not only, am I well positioned to start this company, but there's a massive problem right here in Orlando, which, when it comes to solid waste recycling and composting is, behind the rest of the country. So,
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's been one of these like, you obviously are passionate about it, but not a lot of people are like, "Hey, let's innovate," in the in the garbage stream here. But it's so important for closing that cycle. I mean, I just went to one of my Beth McKee was on. She's a local musician, does these incredible like things called La La La, and she partners with one of the I forget the name of the food bank, but we went in for an hour and it was looked like all of the diverted food from Starbucks's, like, how they have all that prepared food. And so whatever they couldn't sell by a certain point in time was bagged up and frozen and then brought to them too. And I was like, look at all of this. I mean, great for people that are hungry and, at least they diverting it to people that are hungry and like to eat. But then, taking it another step further into like, okay, well, what can we do and turn this into something that will actually give back to our soil and create soil amendments, which I know not everybody's into, but I
mhm.
happen to be a little bit of a geek, and I know that the loss of topsoil here in
Oh, yeah.
America is a really big, significant problem.
They say we have like 60 or 70 more harvests left
Yeah,
than our topsoil,
yeah,
which is crazy. And a couple of stats I love to kind of recite. I call them like the 40%. So 40% of our food in the United States is wasted.
mhm,
And, that could be at the farm, that could be at the grocery store, at home, from residents, stuff expiring in their fridge. So it's really like a logistics problem we have,
right.
not a lack of food. And then the other 40% is 40% of the trash stream of what makes up our landfills is organic waste, which is compostable. So, those are the two kind of like stats that really speak to the issue. So,
Yeah, I mean, when you just said that about, logistics problems, I mean, I think a lot of people have read the headlines about, um, because of the tariffs, there's a bunch of soybean that isn't being purchased, and so there's now just fields and fields of soybeans that aren't going to be, properly utilized, and are probably just gonna go to waste, because of these logistic problems, which is why we so need local food systems that are strong and have the logistics, which is what you're doing. Like, did you tell me that you don't actually, I mean, I know you compost in your backyard, but you are actually partnering with farmers to do the actual composting, and you're more of the logistics.
yeah, that's right. I mean, when people hear O-Town Compost, they figure we're the composters. And sure, that's how I started with a pitchfork in my yard. But, like I said, we kind of grew too fast where I would just had a half acre out in East Orlando. But now we set up an economy for, you know, we basically do the collection of the food waste and we haul it to a network of wood waste processors and farmers we pay them tipping fees just like you would at the landfill. So they have a source of revenue to kind of invest in the process that it takes to turn this stuff into finished soil amendment or finished compost. And then the compost isn't ours, it becomes theirs. A lot of our composting partners, they have a use for it right there on their farm, or they have like an end market so they can sell the food waste compost, which by the way is super diverse with nutrients and very rich. But we donate back the finished compost to our subscribers. So ultimately, we have to buy back the compost from them,
Mm-hmm.
and that works for us because processing compost and having like a site and all the equipment is honestly like a separate business in itself. We're got our hands full just focusing on the collection side and the routing and making sure that our service is really good, and we're setting up programs for people. We're educating them on the front end why they should be diverting this stuff from the trash.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you said that I didn't fully grasp myself about, because the line is you can't compost meat and fish, and and then there's like all these things about smells and things like that. So what are like some of these myths that you guys are uniquely suited? Because I know one of the reasons that I tried composting in my backyard, and then I don't know if everybody knows, but there's a rat overrun in the in the area.
That's from you?
I-
Not sure.
and I mean, I think that maybe I didn't have it set up quite correctly. Maybe there was better ways or whatever. But I know that like I had a lot of concerns about, will my dogs dig into this? There's like a lot of things that go into it. Will it smell? Will there be flies? Will it attract rodents? All these different things. So what are some of the myths, and what are some of the ways that your service really helps to kind of bust those myths or solve some of those problems?
Yeah, and I'll start at the beginning because the key to composting and success with composting in your backyard is with oxygen. And that's the reason we turn our compost, and they tell you to turn it frequently because it gives the material that oxygen, which helps the aerobic bacteria thrive. And they heat up. One of the myths is that put your compost pile in the sun because that gives it the heat. No, actually, the heat in a compost pile, and this is why you can compost in Maine in the middle of the winter. It comes from the bacterial like kinetic energy,
Mhm.
because they're just going crazy as they eat the carbon and they do their work. But the reason people can't compost meat, dairy, fish in their backyard, and there's a big risk that it might attract your dog or rodents, is because typically people don't manage their piles that well in their
We're
backyard.
busy, man.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
trying to get through the day.
Exactly. So
Make it easy, Calgon. Take it away.
and they're small piles, so you got to make sure you have the right mix of carbon with the nitrogen. You got to make sure the pile heats up, uniformly
Basic,
throughout.
basically, if you don't do your own pool chemicals, composting may be a little outside of your
Well,
range.
doing like if you're just throwing fruit back there
Yeah,
and
it's
some
fine.
eggshells,
A
no
little,
big
a
deal.
little bit of
Yeah.
lawn debris. Yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't need any complicated formula, but
right.
that's why we accept this stuff is because we compost in giant piles that constantly turning, sustaining those high heats over 131 degrees Fahrenheit. It's killing any pathogens, weed seeds, or fly larvae. And we look like the composters we work with, they look at their compost piles as like they look at it as a manufacturing process because they're manufacturing a product that has to be free of weed seeds, pathogens, and fly larvae, or their end buyers will, throw up their hands and be like, "What the hell?"
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's the biggest misconception. The other is it's all this work, but if you're a restaurant or you're someone who has is cooking a lot or making a lot of food, the majority of your trash is already organic waste that can be composted. You're simply just using one bin instead of the other. It's not like O-Town Compost is going to come in, create more waste for you to manage. No, it's the same amount of waste, and you're just separating it into one bin instead of the other. you're not having to make heavy trips with a heavy trash bag to your trash bin anymore or dumpster.
Or having to, like, you have to buy the service that cleans out because inevitably a trash bag breaks and now you got
Yeah.
like nasty smelling stuff at the bottom of your trash bin, and you
Yeah.
guys you fill up a bucket, it's sealed. Like I have one of those, okay, like if you guys don't have the pull out drawers in your kitchen cabinets, you're not living. Okay. But I have one that like I pull out under my sink. And so it's like my trash cans are like on this like thing. And that would be a perfect spot to put a composting bin that is sealed. And then you just put it on the porch and you guys pick it up and you drop off a new fresh one.
Yeah, exactly. We even send you a text message reminder the night before so
Bless
you
you
don't
guys.
forget to
We're all ADHD.
Yeah. And, all that's left in your trash once you start composting is dry plastics, maybe some dry paper products. We know people subscribe just to make sure their trash doesn't stink anymore. So it's kind of like the reverse of the common misconception that composting smells.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been fighting that from day one, but we're continuing to fight the good fight and prove that, in fact, as long as you're managing the compost program properly, it's not going to smell.
Right. Now, I have a question for you. You've measured like kind of the input. Was it 10 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
10 million pounds diverted? That's insane.
Yeah, since we started in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 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 If you guys are just tuning in, I should remind everyone you're listening to Front Porch Radio. I'm Julie Wilder. My guest is Charlie Pioli from O-Town. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. O-Town Compost. And they've diverted 10 million pounds of foods because that's part of your business. You weigh everything, right?
Yeah.
You know how much the bucket weighs and you just put so you weigh everything. Do you know how much compost that's turned into? What is like the usual?
Rule of thumb is like a third of it is finished compost because compost really, shrinks after you process it. All the water kind of runs out of it. So, yeah, that's what? 3.3 million pounds of finished compost.
I'm into it. Yeah. That's so amazing. And so you do it, you do the household thing, which is incredible, pickup service, depending on how many, people you have in the house or whatever. But you also, one of the things I hadn't really thought of, but it seems like was events like weddings and things like that. What are some of the more interesting events that you've been able to do?
Yeah, so we're like a preferred vendor at the Orlando Science Center, which is really popular.
They really should be on it. So yeah. I'm glad they are.
They are.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, they're awesome. And, we're working with all the caterers there. And we, have some of our clients are like Arthur's Catering and Puffin Stuff, some of the premier catering companies in Orlando, where we not only compost at their central kitchen where all the food is prepared, but we see them at these weddings and events that they work alongside us. And, we provide a staff member who's there kind of managing the compost and recycling bins. Oftentimes we're back of house. So as the servers bus, we're just there to scrape plates and bus, making the caterers' lives so much easier.
So much easier.
Yeah.
I'm in love with that idea. That's incredible.
Yeah. And, we also do a lot of trade shows at the Orange County Convention Center. Those are a little bit different, where we have these like waste hubs with the 3-bin system, trash, recycling, and compost. Thousands of guests bring their to-go meals, which are often disposable. So they just drop them on a counter, and our staff is there to separate. And really, the reason we get contracted for those is because these trade shows and conferences, they want to kind of demonstrate to their guests, like, we're doing something sustainable, which, we're all for that. And then, we even have, like, if you're a subscriber and you have a birthday party at home, you're not going to contract us to stand in the corner of your living room. So
that would be a little creepy.
That would be pretty creepy. But
although I could see the TikTok videos.
And my girlfriend came up with this idea of the DIY green event bin. And she was going to remind me to say it was her idea. But basically, we just give you a 13-gallon event bin. We drop it off on your pickup day. That weekend is your birthday party or something. And then we pick it up on the following pickup day. So it's really just for people who generate more food waste because of a one-off event rather than, contracting us to just be there.
And you also, of course, we started talking about restaurants. So what are some of the restaurants in town that are utilizing your service?
Yeah, I love to shout out our customers because they really deserve it. We compost with Kaya, which won a green Michelin star.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that reason is not only do they buy their produce from Ever Oak Farm, this like market garden farm out in East Orlando, but a lot of our food waste would go to Ever Oak. We would pay them tipping fees to process it into compost. And Farmer Mike with Ever Oak, he uses the compost as his fertility. He doesn't buy a lot of outside, fertilizer.
Right.
So that's like a complete closed loop system, which is great. We also compost at the Strand, another Michelin star that works with
That makes
Ever Oak.
me so happy. And they got a Michelin star?
I think a while ago,
Oh
or
my
it was like a recommendation.
When they opened, I have to tell you, the first meal I ever had there, I was like, listen, I gave the server an extra tip, but I was like, this extra $10 is going to the house because they're not charging enough for how good this food is. It is
So
one of
good.
the most humble, sweetest little spots. Just shout out to them. They're great. And that makes me even happier to know just gives me good feelings inside.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of waste I mean, if you're good at managing a restaurant, you can minimize it, but there's
And
waste. I mean,
I'm
people have
sure.
food on their plate.
Yeah.
I will say top tip for people that have restaurants to reduce food waste is have delicious food. Because I remember at Dandelion, anytime I was doing dishes and I saw a lot of hummus coming back, I would say something's off with the hummus, taste it, because I knew people would eat our hummus. And I would right size our meals to avoid food waste. So if there was usually 2 ounces coming back, I'd be like, all right, well, we're going to take this back. People can't eat that. Anyway,
No, I totally
little pro
agree.
tips.
And like the owners of the Strand probably run a tight kitchen. The
Oh,
food
you
is
can tell they do.
delicious, but
Yeah.
it's still like 100
Yeah,
to 200 pounds a week.
you
So
can't do anything about the chicken bones and
the
the
trimmings
trimmings and all of that kind of stuff.
And then the other client I'll shout out is a new one on the scene who just got a Michelin recommendation is Smoke Made Meats. The owner, Tyler, kind of studied barbecue in East Texas.
Where you should be studying barbecue.
Exactly.
Okay.
And part of the whole barbecue out there is respect to the animal.
Yes.
And that's why composting is kind of like the thing to do versus, oh, you're from Texas? Yeah.
My kid didn't like barbecue, and I was like, what's wrong with you? And then we went to Texas, and she had some brisket, and she was like, I understand. I was like, oh, right. Everything we're eating is a mockery of real barbecue. Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to galvanize the moment. So tell me who this is and where I can get their food, because if they studied in East Texas, I'm in.
Smoke Made Meats right there on like Curry Ford and Crystal River.
Okay.
Yeah, they're amazing, and they're getting the recognition they deserve. But others, we have a contract with the City of Winter Park to compost a lot of restaurants on Park Ave. So Bosphorus, Prado, a lot of Ava, a lot of others, and then some hotels. Which honestly, you want to address Orange County's food waste problem, go after the Banquet hotels. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
They over prepare by like 3 or 4 times for like a simple conference or event.
Right.
They charge a lot for it, so it's just baked into their model. And then besides some Marriott hotels that we compost at, a lot of it is just going to the compactor and going to the Orange County landfill. And our landfill in Orange County only has about 12 to 15 years left till it reaches capacity. And that means we need to find a different solution for our trash, and taxpayers are going to feel the burden of that.
Right.
It's either A, we bulldoze more rural land in a part of Orange County, or B, we transport it further to a different county's landfill, like Volusia or
Mhm.
St. Cloud.
Okay, I had so many thoughts while you were just talking. One of the things that I really want to kind of give you accolades on, though, is okay. So when I was at Dandelion, there was this thing. It still exists. I googled it. It's called the Green Restaurant Association, and what they do is they like kind of audit. They have like this, whole audit process that you go through and whatever. And I was like, look, I'm already green. I'm eco-friendly. Like I already have the swag and like what why would I pay you to do all this? And so they were like, well, I saw that you're using the corn-based composting, cups for your to-go cups. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, I have a question. Do you have commercial composting in your town? And I was like, no, because that was true at the time. And they were like, well, those cups only break down in a commercial setting. They will not break down in a home setting. So not only are you getting a cup made from essentially GMO corn, which is not great, but essentially they're like, that's greenwashing, lady. And I was like, oh my God, you guys. And so one of the things that I loved is when I called, I spoke with Erin, who is the office manager, you said.
Yeah,
Um,
she's our general manager.
yeah, and I was saying, hey, this is what I want to do, da 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 da. And I was, she was like, well, which ones are you wanting to use? Which I was like, all right, this girl knows what's up, And so she actually, without me even signing up for the client, it's a pipe dream that I'm even going to open the rest. It's going to happen. We're going to do it. But I mean, this is like, I was just doing basically a feasibility study of my own. And she went ahead and said, we're going to get some and we're going to put it in the composter and see if it actually breaks down,
Yeah.
which I thought was incredible attention to detail, very proactive, and, just doing the right thing for the right thing's sake, it wasn't a profit-driven decision. It was
Yeah.
just a right thing to do, detail that just blew me out of the water.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like one of our clients, Wakaiva Island, they used to have those corn-based compostable cups. And we did the same kind of onion bag test. Imagine an onion bag, so it's breathable, but it also holds the material in it. So you bury it in the bottom of the pile and then you dig it up like 2-3 months later. So that's how Aaron
Mhm.
would have done it. But we realized that those bioplastics that resemble plastics and they're clear, they don't really break down even super well in commercial compost piles. And ultimately, it is the composter's decision whether
Right.
they have time for that or not. We just recommended they change their cups to number 1 PT, which are recyclable, but
That's what we did.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
honestly, and I had to be like, hey, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because
yeah,
I was like, corn cups when we rolled it out. And then I was like, oh, whoops, egg on face. I didn't know, learning moment for all of us because
yeah.
these are easily recyclable. And then I did introduce like branded cups so I could promote the right behavior, which is reusing a cup.
Oh, okay.
And I gave people free refills with that just to promote the right kind of behavior, which is what we, should all be kind of trying to do.
And I'll just say the one cup, if you're looking for compostable cups, is the paper BPI certified compostable cup. Those will take all day, any day, and they will break down pretty fast. But it is kind of weird, like drinking a beer out of a paper cup.
It doesn't have the same feel.
Yeah.
But I will say, one of the things, my teenage daughter, I have a thing about food waste. So she knows all this. And I don't know how she ended up, somebody took her to a Disney cruise and her observation of that, because it's like all you can eat buffets everywhere. And she was like, Mom, there was so much food waste. Like she was just like, you would have died, like it just felt wrong on every level. And I don't know, maybe that's another go after the cruise ships, but they probably throw it overboard. Who knows what they do on the cruise ships?
Yeah, I hear that they sometimes just, do throw it overboard, or they have like digesters that
Mhm.
grind it up and
Yeah.
discharge it
I guess if
at
you're throwing it
sea.
overboard, the sea life is eating it. I don't know.
I don't
We don't have enough information. We can't talk about it. Okay.
know.
Okay. So, okay. I wrote some questions down. Okay. So here we are. We're in Orlando. You're talking about commercial. You're talking about, residential. we've got, we're going to talk about the schools coming up soon here. But I know that one of the big pushes from the city and Mayor Dyer was zero food waste by 2040. It's part of their larger green initiatives. I'm just curious, do you think that we can like realistically achieve it? 2040, it seems like so far away, but like I was also like it was like 2009 just the other day, so I don't know. It's like probably coming right around the corner. Like yeah, like what does it take in terms of policy, infrastructure, like public, like to make composting as normal as
Yeah.
recycling is now?
Well, let me start by saying there's a lot of cities that have zero waste initiatives and zero waste goals. They all kind of made them at the same time, you know, 5 to 10 years ago. I think these zero waste goals are about the journey more than the destination of getting to, 90 to 100% diversion. That right now is impossible because of how corporations and producers are making products that are just, multi-materials. They're not recoverable in any way. And until we, at a bigger scale, put pressure on producers or manufacturers to make their products out of like compostable or recyclable packaging, you know, that's not
That's how
our
they,
responsibility.
Germany does that. They're very, very, very good about basically they're responsible from crib to cradle is what they call it. So they're responsible for the cost of whatever the waste is on the end cycle.
And we're beginning to see that in Oregon, home state. Woo,
Yep.
woo. They just started.
See naked bike riders.
Yeah, they just had an emergency naked bike that
That's go
I
Portland.
will or
Lead
won't.
the way, you naked freaks. I love it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so in Oregon, they just implemented EPR law. EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility, basically putting the onus and the cost on the producers of these materials, where basically producers of materials are having to put up money to pay for the collection and processing infrastructure of their products. Mm-hmm. It's working great. Oregon continues to have one of the highest diversion rates for waste in the whole country, like 60 to 80%. So we are seeing people get there. And obviously, if Florida and Orlando were really interested in achieving that zero waste, they would be, following what, standing on the backs of those who have already started doing this. And there's plenty of them. The nearest one is city of Gainesville, who O-Town Compost also has a service area out there. And about 5 years ago, a bunch of city residents got together, said, hey, we really care about this zero waste thing. We want to see the city implement ordinances where if you're a restaurant and you produce a good amount of food waste, you have to be paying for a collection service. So they have a food waste mandate on the commercial side.
It's a utility.
It's a utility alongside trash and recycling. Mm-hmm. Like no one would say that trash is optional.
Right.
So, and then multifamily apartments, Gainesville has a lot of student housing. If you're an apartment complex, you have to provide a little kitchen caddy for the unit, and you have to have outdoor bins that residents can walk down their food scraps and empty them, grab a new compostable bag, and then continue to divert their food scraps. Also, the city of Gainesville just put out an RFP that's that's like a request for proposals. So contractors like O-Town can bid on a citywide composting program for single family residents, which is being done all over the nation, including Austin, Texas, and Portland. But ultimately, I think what the city of Orlando needs to do, start small. Let's dedicate funding to a pilot program for single family homes, maybe just a community of 500 to 1,000 homes. The city can help with public outreach and education. Although contractors like O-Town, we do provide a lot of that educational material. Like when you sign up, you get a little FAQ booklet. You get, signage which tells you what is and isn't recyclable, what to do in the case of pests or odors. And then on the commercial side, like we need to start, maybe putting pressure on some of these banquet hotels. One thing I've proposed to the Orange County government is a disposal surcharge tax of $1 to $2 per ton of trash that comes into the landfill. Currently, you're a hauler, you're bringing in trash, it's like $50 a ton. Make it $51 a ton. Take that $1, pool it in a fund, and that goes to funding these diversion programs like composting and maybe, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I won't go off on the rails on policy because, we're hoping
It's
people like Anna Escamani champion these things.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. She's been on this
Yeah.
program a number of times before she was even an elected official.
And she's been a subscriber for O-Town for like
I have
5
no
years.
freaking doubt. She's such a rock star.
She is.
So those are some really good things. And, I will say, like, especially for restaurant owners that might be listening to this, one of the things at Dandelion that was such a problem was that, there was no room to put a dumpster. Like, we had the roll-up bins, but and I was like, look, I don't actually want a trash dumpster. I want a recycling dumpster, which took me a while to get one. It was a whole thing. But I eventually got a recycling dumpster because most of my stuff was recycling. And then, of course, I did have the food. Worm composter, don't recommend. And so now I have an even smaller footprint at the bookstore. There would be absolutely no way I could do a recycling pull-up dumpster. I mean, I'm like, okay, how am I gonna have to haul recycling? Like, because I just know. But like, one of the things that really, with such a small footprint and being so environmentally conscious, I was so grateful that you guys existed, because that's going to help me with my direct, just you don't want all that hanging out, for many, many reasons. And so to be able to divert it to you guys is going to be a huge thing. It really, really does impact the amount of waste that you have going out, and it's just more pleasant. It's just a better situation. It's a good setup, man. Okay. So let's remind everyone else again, you're listening to WPRK 91.5 FM, the best in basement radio out of Rollins College. My name is Julie Wilder. This is Front Porch Radio. We have conversations for the common good every Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's a weekly show, and we talk with cool people doing cool things. And my guest today is Charlie Pioli from O-Town Composting. Now, I just want to let you guys know, this guy started this in 2020. That was 5 years ago. And the amount, like, he has been able to coordinate, like, you're mending a food system, like a gap in the food system, which when a lot of us, like John Rife, myself, a couple of other people in the community were first starting on this like food system, relocalizing the food system. One of the things was like, investors were wanting to invest in like the fancy, flashy things. And we were like, and we need to invest in closing the gaps, in the food system. And one of the huge gaps here, as you know, and are taking the opportunity to solve is the composting and end of life cycle stuff. And so it's huge what you're doing. It's very, very important, especially as we move into a future where we do have a lot going on. Those who've listened to my program for a long time know that we've talked about immigration and farm workers and the impacts that the current policy are going to be having on the farms. We have a lot. We're starting to hear reports that there's a lot of food waste and things like that, which means we have this, like you said, a logistics nightmare with food where we've been, importing food from California to Florida when, why don't we just get the food from Florida? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just,
it makes us more resilient.
It's a system right now. And so like basically taking this opportunity to relocalize, which means, creating good homegrown fertilizer out of the compost, which means, just honoring, and I might be like 1% of the population that thinks this way, but like, man, think of all the bees and the bugs and the farmers that had to grow that. And then think of all the fuel it took to get that thing to you. And then think about all of the different hands it went through to get to your table and the resources, the water, all of the different things. And then, like, man, the least we can do is put it in a compost bin and let it turn into fertilizer.
And then, yeah, that fertilizer has no runoff that really negatively affects like our sea life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like worm castings. It's kind of like a great fertilizer. And we actually work under the same roof as this cool up and coming company called Wriggle Brew, and they sell worm tea. One time they were asked like, "Hey, does your fertilizer like kill fish and sea life?" So they demonstrated and took like a fish tank of their diluted worm tea and let a fish swim around in it, and it was just chilling in there, like
He's like,
doing good.
yummy, Yeah,
So what a flex!
I actually had like a home worm composter for a while, and that was fun. But like, then I'm running a business. I can't keep up with everything, man. And that's why it's so important that we have people like you that are stepping up to the plate and doing things and doing so well. And one of the things that I was just super blown away by was the Orange County Public School contract that you won. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, that's like my favorite program that we do, mostly because, the impact it's having on the future generations of recyclers and composters. A couple years ago, we won a USDA grant in partnership with Orange County Public Schools to compost in the cafeterias and kitchens of 21 schools all over the districts. It wasn't really like one section of the district: elementary, middle, high school. And that basically was a feasibility study that showed that these schools can reduce how many pickups they're getting for their trash. We accept their fiber lunch trays. That is totally compostable because they're just uncoated paper trays. And that makes up so much volume in their dumpsters that they were able to like really reduce how much trash they were producing. So that and in conjunction, a lot of these schools have school gardens, and part of our program is we bring back 2 bags of finished compost per year, so they can, use that in their gardens and grow more veggies and herbs. And we've been tracking every pound we've diverted with OCPS, and we just surpassed like 600,000 pounds among 21 schools. That's 1/10 of the school district. If we were able to roll that out to the whole district, that would easily be like 6 million pounds a school year. And more importantly, like these kids are growing up to composting. They know that their food waste or that banana peel they're holding in their hand doesn't belong in the trash. It has another life in the compost, and they're seeing what the compost becomes after it's converted, and hopefully they're growing up to be like advocates for this new, this way of living that most of our grandparents were
Yeah.
composting, and then we kind of lost
This
it.
isn't
Yeah.
new,
This
everyone.
is not new.
I was just thinking about they don't call them composting toilets back in the day. They called them outhouses. I was just thinking about that, and so much of, this like modern era is that things just go away and we don't think about it. But there is no such thing as a way. And there's like, I'm quoting Story of Stuff, which was like decades old by now. But there is no such thing as a way. There is, um, there's this, idea that like time is this line and at the end is death. And then there's like, and so we like avoid it because that's the end. Right. But in my paradigm, and in a lot of people's paradigm, life is a cycle and it's a circle and it replenishes. If we can do this, yes, the environment is good. Yes, the economics are good. But it's also about community resilience, because like this is a really important, crucial thing that, part of being in a community that makes us resilient is to be able to have composting and be able to produce our own fertilizer.
Yeah, and I think that's the language I've been trying to use more with, these public comments at county commissioner meetings is
Hmm.
resilience and how it's ultimately making us better situated for the future, not dependent on
Hold on
other.
1 second. I don't know if my headphones went off. I think my headphones are cutting in and out. Sorry. I think everyone was still listening. So I just couldn't hear you in my headphones for a second, but you're okay.
Yeah, let me mention also like what is a way. I recommend everyone go to your local landfill. Right now in on November 15th, Orange County Landfill is hosting like Recycles Day where they're opening up. Um, basically you can tour their landfill on November 15th. Just reach out to Orange County Solid Waste Department. But, I spent a lot of time at the landfill. The reason food waste doesn't just break down like it would if you threw your banana peel on the lawn or in your backyard is because every day they cover the trash and all that organic waste with a layer of dirt and they compact it as the bulldozer runs it over. It gets kind of put into this anaerobic environment without oxygen. The organic waste just mummifies without oxygen. There's nothing like oxygen is the reason it breaks down in the first place and becomes, carbon or CO2. And in that anaerobic environment, it produces methane gas, which is many times more potent of a greenhouse gas. And you'll smell it if you drive by
Oh, yeah.
the Orange County landfill on 417. It's that sharp cheddar smell. Um,
That's being generous.
yeah, I actually like cheddar. I don't like landfills, but there is also some greenwashing going on right now. If you like, I recently was watching a baseball game and a waste management advertisement came on about the new modern landfill, and they're talking about this methane gas capture system that they have they drill wells in landfills and then they are able to harness some of the gas and use it for energy, which is true. That is very much true. But most of the methane gas comes off in the first like few months to a year before they're able to drill these wells. Like 90% of it just goes up into our ozone, where 10% is actually captured and burned for fuel. So I don't want people to think that there is such thing as this modern landfill and that it's a moot point to basically
Right.
compost.
Yeah. Well, and then also, we're putting our trash into plastic bags, which does not help, right? For a while there, I was like brown paper bagging my trash, because I thought, well, at least that'll do something, but yeah, everything that you're saying, it just makes sense. And it's just a matter of like making just like these incremental shifts, every day. Like what's one thing, I can do to, just, do my little tiny part, and also make my life easier, and feel really good about, being part of, the helpers. That's what we talk about here, on the program. We talk about helpers, healers, and heretics. So, that's part of the helping that we can do. We're running out of time. So before we wrap up, I would, just want to ask you, our program is all about like the ordinary folks doing extraordinary things for the common good, and also just common little things, right? For listeners who might feel overwhelmed by how big the waste problem is, obviously, what are like one like small meaningful action that they could take? You know, it doesn't even have to be related to composting, but like on the path to it, what would you say? Like, was there something for you that just kind of was like the key that turned?
Yeah, I would. Three things come to mind. There is a lot of litter pickups being hosted right now in Orlando, and they do a great job picking up plastic that could clog our waterways, go into the stormwater drains. So, pick up trash is a small thing that anyone can do. Also, right now with the tariffs, like we're not the cost of aluminum, and we're not really like importing, these cheap metals we were. So, if you're American, the best thing you can do for our economy is recycle your aluminum cans, especially, but cardboard, glass bottles, plastic bottles, and clean paper. Like think five is what Orange County says, those five materials. And then I also would say, like, of course, you gotta, you know, compost, whether it's in your backyard, a convenient odor and pest-free service like O-Town Compost, or the bokashi composting or worm composting. But even if you were like this Halloween, if you have a pumpkin and you don't want to pay someone to compost it, take your pumpkin to a cow field and just toss it in. The cow will love the snack, and it'll also prevent it from going to the landfill.
Oh yeah, you got a pumpkin. But you know what? I think my first in on composting was my tea and coffee grounds.
Mm.
And like that's something you could just throw in your yard because it's not really going to attract pests or anything like that. But you're like, hey, I could just toss it in the yard. I don't know, is that bad?
No,
Okay,
no,
is that good?
that's
I'm like,
good.
am I doing something wrong? But that was my first thing, and it just made me feel like, yeah, I'm doing something. And then I started a worm, and then it just snowballed into me having a worm composting bin in my under my my kitchen sink. So it does get addictive once you learn about it.
Yeah.
It's a good rabbit hole to go down. So. Man, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming to the program and educating us. And really, like, you're a local hero. I know you're not from here, but we are so grateful for all of the education that you got out on the West Coast and are bringing to help transform our community into a better place.
No, thank you so much for having me, Julie. And, I've lived here for 9 years and I do call it home. There's a lot of opportunity in Florida, and I just feel like it's such a beautiful state. One of my other big passions is working on conservation in Florida, and that kind of goes in line with composting. If we can't fill up our landfills because it'll just take up more of our land, we need to conserve and conserve our beautiful nature here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yay, another great program. Thank you so much. That was Charlie Pioli of O-Town Compost, reminding us that what we throw away never really goes away, but with a little care and community, it can come back to nourish the earth again. If you'd like to hear more from today's conversation, maybe you caught just the last half of it. We have we do podcast this on Substack. So there is going to be a special offer just for our listeners from O-Town Compost in the podcast. So if you just go on a Substack and search for Front Porch Radio, you'll be able to listen to the full podcast and just subscribe because it takes me about a week to get these things, the podcast up there after the show. But that is a great way to stay tuned, stay informed, and also catch past episodes. I just did one last week on Sadopopulism that was really good. And I think everyone should listen to that. So yeah, this is Julie Wilder. You've been listening to Front Porch Radio. And we've been keeping the conversations growing one story at a time and sometimes hopefully one compost pile at a time. Thank you so much for inspiring me to get back to composting because I stopped for a little while and now I'm like, I really need to get back on that. So that's why I do the show, to keep me on the straight and narrow. You guys stay tuned. Gulf of America will be on next. Thanks for listening.